Welcome to this story. Not just any story, but the story of the most powerful, most influential, and most respected man in the history of the world. This is not a fairy tale. This is not fiction. This is the real story of a man who was born an orphan, lived in silence, walked alone, was laughed at, hated, attacked, but changed the entire world forever, with nothing in his hand but the truth. This is the story of a man who had no wealth, no army, no media, no government, and yet he conquered hearts, not lands. He fought ignorance, not people. He defeated darkness, not with violence, but with patience, kindness, and character. His name is spoken more than any other name on earth. His words are followed by billions, and even today, more than 1,400 years later, his message still shines in every corner of the planet. This is the story of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. But this story is not just about religion. It's a story of struggle, pain, rejection, betrayal, and victory. It is about how one man changed the world with love, truth, and never giving up, even when the whole world was against him. If you listen till the end, you will feel stronger. You will feel more peaceful. And you will learn powerful lessons that can change your own life, no matter who you are or where you come from. And yes, as you listen, you'll also improve your English, because this story is told in simple words, perfect for English learners. So you're not just listening to a powerful story, you're also learning to express yourself, speak with power, and grow your language just by feeling every word. So take a deep breath, sit with an open heart, and prepare to witness the greatest story ever told in the most powerful way ever shared. Now, let's begin Part 1. The birth of a light in the darkest time. Let us go back. Not 10 years, not 100, but more than 1,400 years ago, in the year 570 CE. The world at that time was not peaceful. It was not beautiful. It was full of darkness. People were worshiping idols made of stone, wood, even dates, and then eating them when hungry. Women had no value. Baby girls were often buried alive by their own fathers. There were no human rights. The poor were crushed. The slaves were tortured, and the rich ruled with cruelty. Wars were common. People fought for revenge, for ego, for tribes. Truth was rare. Lies were normal. Cheating, killing, drinking, and abusing were part of daily life. And in the middle of this darkness, a baby was born, in the holy city of Makkah, on a Monday morning, in the month of Rabi al-Awwal. His name was Muhammad ibn Abdullah. But he didn't open his eyes to a loving father, because his father, Abdullah, had already died before he was born. Yes, he was born an orphan. His mother, Amina, was heartbroken, but strong. She held her child close and named him Muhammad, which means the praised one. People around her asked, "Why not name him after his father?" She replied, "Because I want him to be praised not just by people on earth, but by the one in the heavens. That one sentence would become a prophecy. For the first few years, baby Muhammad, PBUH, was raised in the desert by a kind woman named Halima, as was tradition in Arab culture, to build strength, language, and health in clean desert air. Halima's life changed forever when Muhammad, peace be upon him, came into her home. Her goats gave more milk, her animals became stronger, her house felt blessed. She later said, "We never saw blessings like the ones we received with this child." But soon he returned to his mother, Amina. She loved him deeply. But when he was just 6 years old, his mother took him on a journey to visit his father's grave. And on the way back, she fell ill in a village called Abwa, far from home. Amina died, and little Muhammad, peace be upon him, was left completely alone in the world. He was just 6, no father, no mother, only pain, only silence. But he didn't complain. He didn't cry to the world. He just walked quietly, with dignity, carrying a sadness that no child should carry. After his mother's death, Muhammad, PBUH, was taken in by his grandfather, Abdul Muttalib, the respected leader of Makkah. But only 2 years later, his grandfather also died. Now just 8 years old, he was passed to his uncle, Abu Talib, a kind but poor man who had many children of his own, but loved Muhammad, peace be upon him, more than all. Abu Talib raised him like a son. He protected him, taught him, and stood by him always. Even as a child, Muhammad, peace be upon him, was different. He never lied. He never shouted. He never hurt others. He helped the poor. He cleaned his own clothes. He shared everything he had. People around him started calling him Al-Amin, which means the trustworthy one. He was known for honesty, kindness, humility, and silence. He worked as a shepherd, taking care of sheep, a job that requires patience, gentleness, and calm. Even his enemies later admitted, "We have never seen a man more truthful, more kind, and more noble than Muhammad." Muhammad, peace be upon him, was now growing into a young man. He had no rich family, no powerful title, no servants. But he had something greater than all of that. He had character. He worked hard. He walked gently. He spoke only when needed. He never hurt, never cheated, never lied. People trusted him with their secrets, their business, and their hearts. Even people who didn't believe in his religion later still said, "Muhammad, we've never seen anyone more honest." He was about 25 years old, still unmarried, still working small jobs. In those days, one of the main jobs in Makkah was trade, buying goods from one city and selling them in another. Muhammad, PBUH, started working in business, selling goods, managing trade caravans, and helping others run their businesses with honesty and skill. One day, a wealthy woman named Khadija heard about Muhammad's honesty. She was a widow, wise, powerful, and respected. But she was tired of hiring men who lied or cheated in business. Someone told her, "Hire Muhammad. He's honest and smart. He never lies." So she sent him a message. Will you take my goods to Syria and sell them for me?" He agreed. He traveled with her servant Maysara and handled the business. When he returned, Khadijah noticed something strange. He had brought back more profit than any man before him, but more than that, he didn't keep any extra for himself. He didn't ask for more. He didn't lie about the trade. He gave every coin with full honesty. And her servant Maysara said, "This man is unlike anyone I've ever seen. He doesn't look at women. He never raises his voice. He prays silently. He treats people with mercy, even strangers and slaves." Khadijah was touched, not because of his money, but because of his soul. Khadijah was about 40 years old. Muhammad, PBUH, was about 25. Even though she was older, and many rich men had already asked to marry her, she refused them all. But now, she sent a quiet message through a friend. Would Muhammad accept a proposal of marriage from a woman like me? When Muhammad, PBUH, heard this, he didn't say yes immediately. He went to his uncle Abu Talib and asked for advice. Abu Talib said, "Khadijah is noble. She's pure. She has chosen you for your character. If you agree, I will arrange the marriage." And so it happened. They were married in a simple, beautiful ceremony. No show, no noise, no pride. Just love, respect, and purity. This was not just a marriage. It was a partnership, a friendship, a shelter, for two noble souls in a world full of cruelty. They lived together with love, with laughter, with pain, with patience, and they stayed loyal to each other for 25 years. She was the first person to believe in him, the first to hold his heart, and the first to support him when the entire world would later turn against him. They had children. Some lived. Some passed away young. Their son Qasim died in childhood. Their daughters, including Fatima, survived. Muhammad, PBUH, never married another woman while Khadijah was alive, not even once. This was rare in that time, but it shows his deep love and loyalty. Even after her death, he never stopped mentioning her. Years later, when he had everything, power, followers, victory, he still said, "She believed in me when no one else did." That is real love. Now, Muhammad, peace be upon him, was in his late 30s. He lived quietly in Makkah, still known as Al-Amin. But the world around him was getting worse. People worshipped idols made of stone and gold. They circled the Kaaba, but not for God, only for pride and tradition. Slaves were beaten. Girls were still buried alive. The poor were starving. The rich were partying. No justice, no mercy, no truth. Muhammad, PBUH, used to feel deep pain inside. He would walk alone to a small cave on a mountain called Hira, just outside the city. He would sit there for hours, sometimes for days, thinking, crying, praying, asking the one who created everything, "Where is the truth?" He had no teacher, no books, no priest, but he had a heart that was pure and a mind that never accepted evil. And then something happened. Something that would change history forever. Something that no one could have expected. He was now 40 years old. He had gone to the cave of Hira again. Alone. It was quiet. It was dark. He was sitting in deep thought. Suddenly, he saw a bright light. He heard a voice that said, "Read." Muhammad, peace be upon him, was afraid. He replied, "I cannot read." Again, the voice said, "Read." He repeated, "I cannot read." And a third time, the voice said, "Read, in the name of your Lord, who created." It was the angel Gabriel. Gabriel, the same angel who came to other prophets before him. But this was the beginning of the greatest mission ever given to any human being, to guide mankind, to spread truth, to speak for the poor, to defend the weak, to teach peace, to teach Islam. Muhammad, peace be upon him, was shaking. He ran home to Khadijah. He cried, "Cover me, cover me." He told her everything. Did she laugh? Did she doubt? She held him close and said, "By Allah, he will never disgrace you. You take care of the poor. You help the weak. You speak the truth. You carry the burdens of others. Allah will never leave you." This was the first day of prophethood. But the world would not welcome him easily. What was coming was the hardest test any human could ever face. He would lose friends, be attacked, be boycotted, be laughed at, be hurt again and again. But he would never give up, because now he was no longer just Muhammad the orphan. He was Muhammad, the messenger of God. Part 2. The first believers, the silent struggles, and the storm that followed. The message had begun. Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, now carried the greatest responsibility ever given to a human being. He was chosen by Allah, not to rule lands or build empires, but to change hearts, to clean souls, and to lift humanity out of darkness into light. But even though the message had arrived, the world around him was still blind. No one else knew what had happened in that cave. No one else had heard the angel. No one else felt the weight he was now carrying. And yet, he remained silent. For days, for weeks, because he was waiting. Waiting for the next command. Waiting for guidance. Until one day, the second message came. The command was now clear. "O you who is covered, stand up and warn the people. Purify yourself. Stay away from evil and be patient for the sake of your Lord." This was it. He could not stay quiet anymore. The mission had begun. He went home to the one person he trusted more than anyone in the world, Khadijah. She believed in him immediately. She didn't ask for miracles. She didn't ask for proof. She knew his truth. She was the first Muslim in the history of the world. Then came the second. A young boy living in his house, Ali ibn Abi Talib, his cousin, only 10 years old. He saw the Prophet praying. He asked him what it was, and when the Prophet explained, Ali said, "This is the truth. I want to follow it." The third believer was Zayd ibn Haritha, his adopted son, a former slave, a young man who had once been kidnapped, sold, and brought to Makkah, but loved Muhammad like a father. And then came Abu Bakr, one of the Prophet's closest friends, a kind, wise, noble man of great respect. As soon as the Prophet told him about Islam, Abu Bakr said, "If it comes from your mouth, it must be the truth. I believe." Abu Bakr didn't stop there. He began spreading the message quietly, and within days he brought more people into Islam. Uthman ibn Affan, Abdur Rahman ibn Auf, Talha ibn Ubaidullah, Zubair ibn al-Awwam, Sa'ad ibn Abi Waqqas. These were not just followers. They would one day become heroes of Islam, leaders of nations, and the closest companions of the Prophet, peace be upon him. But at this stage, it was still a secret. The Prophet began teaching people quietly, in small groups, sometimes in homes, sometimes in secret corners of Makkah. For 3 years, the message was private. No speeches, no public call, no open challenge, because the world was not ready. The society of Makkah was built on idols, pride, tribe, and power. And the message of Islam was the opposite. One God, not hundreds. Equality, not hierarchy. No one better than another, no matter their skin, tribe, or wealth. Mercy, not revenge. Justice, not cruelty. Truth, not blind tradition. But the Prophet knew he could not stay hidden forever. One day the command came again. Warn your closest family, and stand on the mountain and call the people. So he climbed the hill of Safa, a place where announcements were made. He stood tall. He called out, "O people of Makkah, if I told you that an army was behind this mountain ready to attack, would you believe me?" They all replied, "Yes, we have never heard you lie." Then he said, "I am a warner to you from Allah. Leave your false gods. Worship only Him. Save yourselves from punishment. I want nothing from you, no money, no power. I only want your salvation." But instead of accepting, they laughed. They whispered. They became angry. One man, his own uncle, Abu Lahab, shouted, "May you perish! Did you gather us for this?" And he walked away in rage. That day, the insults began. From that moment, life changed. The same people who once loved Muhammad, peace be upon him, now turned against him. Why? Because he had challenged their power, their idols, their tribes, their ego. They began to mock him in the streets. They called him mad, a magician, a poet, a liar. Quraysh tried a new plan. Let's offer him anything he wants: money, women, a kingdom, anything. Just stop him from speaking. They sent their most respected man to him, Utbah ibn Rabia. Utbah said, "O Muhammad, if you want wealth, we will give you all our money. If you want marriage, we'll give you the most beautiful women. If you want to be king, we'll crown you today." The Prophet sat quietly, and then he said, "Are you done, O Abu Wal?" Utbah nodded. Then the prophet recited verses from the Quran, not his own words, but the words of God. The verses shook Utbah. He stood silently and walked away. He told his people, "This is not poetry. This is not magic. This is something beyond us." But they didn't stop. They attacked him harder. They would throw dust on him while he prayed. They would laugh when he walked in the streets. They would place animal intestines on his back while he was in prostration. His own neighbors would throw garbage at his door. Children were taught to insult him, but he never hit back. He never shouted. He never cursed. He just cleaned himself and prayed for them. The Quraysh knew they couldn't touch the prophet directly because he was protected by his tribe. So they began to attack his followers, especially the poor and the weak. They tortured Bilal ibn Rabah, a black slave who had accepted Islam. They tied him to the ground in the burning sun, placed heavy stones on his chest, and whipped him. But Bilal kept saying, "Ahad, Ahad," 1, 1. They killed Sumayya, the first martyr in Islam, a woman who refused to give up her faith. They stabbed her in front of her husband and son. They tortured Yasser, her husband, until he died in pain. They tied up their son, Ammar, burned him, beat him, and forced him to speak words against the prophet. But the prophet comforted him. "If they return, return to your heart." And still, the prophet kept preaching. Every day, he spoke of mercy, forgiveness, and truth. But the pain was growing. People were afraid to accept Islam. Even those who believed kept it secret. But the prophet said, "A time will come when a woman will travel from Yemen to Mecca alone, fearing no one but Allah. But you are a people who rush." He was building faith, not an army. He was planting patience, not rebellion. And he was waiting for the next stage of his mission to begin. The streets of Makkah had become harder. The prophet, peace be upon him, and his followers were being watched, insulted, and attacked daily. People were scared to talk to him. Some hid their faith. Some were forced to lie. And some, like Bilal, Ammar, and Sumayya, suffered pain beyond imagination. But still the prophet continued. Every day, one person at a time, one word at a time. And slowly, Islam was growing. The leaders of Quraysh saw something terrifying. They had mocked him. They had tortured his followers. They had offered him money, power, and women. But still, people were joining him, and the prophet was not afraid. He walked into their gatherings. He recited the Quran in public. He called people to truth, directly, clearly, fearlessly. And the words of the Quran were powerful. People who hated him would sneak around at night just to hear him recite. One man said, "I hated Muhammad more than anything, but when I heard the Quran from his lips, I cried, and I believed." The Quraysh knew they had to try something bigger. They decided to attack the prophet in a new way, not with swords, not with words, but with starvation, isolation, silence. They made a secret document. It said, no one should trade with Muhammad's tribe. No one should marry them. No one should speak to them. No one should help them in any way. The paper was signed, sealed, and hung inside the Kaaba. And just like that, the entire tribe of Banu Hashim, including the Prophet, was cut off from the city. They were forced to leave Makkah and live in a small, dry valley known as Shib Abi Talib, far from food, water, and help. For 3 years, the Muslims suffered in silence. They had no food. Children cried from hunger. They ate leaves. They chewed on dry leather. At night, the sounds of babies crying echoed through the valley, and the Prophet saw it all. He felt every cry. He heard every stomach growl, yet he never gave up. He comforted people. He led them in prayer. He reminded them, with hardship comes ease. Some non-Muslims from outside secretly tried to send food, hiding it in bags, risking their lives to help. But most of Makkah watched in silence. 3 years passed. Then one day, something miraculous happened. A man named Mut'im ibn Adi, a respected leader, decided the boycott had gone too far. He and a few others walked into the Kaaba and said, "This is cruelty. This paper must be destroyed." But when they went to remove the document, they found it had already been eaten by insects. Only one line was left. "In your name, O Allah." The people were shocked. This was no accident. It was a sign. And so the boycott ended. The Muslims returned to Makkah, but the pain was not over. Something much worse was about to happen. Soon after returning to Makkah, the Prophet lost the 2 greatest supporters of his life. First, his beloved uncle Abu Talib, the man who raised him, protected him, stood by him when the world attacked him, became sick. The Prophet sat beside him in his final moments. He whispered, "O my uncle, say just one word, that there is no God but Allah, and I will speak for you on the day of judgment." But Abu Talib looked at the people around him, the leaders of Quraysh. They were watching, they were pressuring him, and in the end, Abu Talib said, "I die upon the religion of my forefathers." The Prophet's eyes filled with tears. He had lost his guardian, and now he had no protection. Days later, a second death came. Khadijah, the love of his life, the first believer, the woman who held him when he cried, stood beside him when the world hated him, also fell ill. She had grown weak during the boycott. She gave everything she had to feed the people. She stood strong for years, but now her time had come. She passed away quietly. The Prophet sat beside her grave. He did not shout. He did not break down, but his heart was in pain. 2 deaths, one after the other, and now he was alone. No wife, no protector, no safety. This year came to be known as Am al-Huzn, the year of sorrow. But even in his deepest sadness, the Prophet kept going. He did not give up. He did not stop. He kept walking. He kept calling to truth. Stones at him. He was bleeding. His sandals were full of blood. He ran to a garden and sat under a tree, tears in his eyes, his face wounded, and then he raised his hands and made a dua, a prayer so powerful, so full of love and pain. "O Allah, I complain to you of my weakness, my lack of support, and how low I am in the eyes of people. You are the most merciful. You are the Lord of the weak. If you are not angry with me, I do not care, but I ask for your mercy." Even in his worst moment, he did not complain about the people. He only asked Allah, "Are you angry with me?" That was his only fear, and Allah answered him, not with words, but with a miracle. Part 3. The Night Journey, the New Hope, and the Road to a New Home. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, was sitting under a tree outside Ta'if. His body was bleeding. His heart was broken. He had lost Khadijah. He had lost Abu Talib. He had walked to a new city with hope. And they threw stones at him. And yet, he still raised his hands to the sky and said, "If you are not angry with me, I do not care." He was alone on earth, but in that moment, Allah showed him something that no human had ever seen, a gift from the heavens. One night, as the Prophet was resting near the Kaaba in Makkah, something unimaginable happened. An angel came to him, the same angel who brought the first revelation, Jibril. And beside Gabriel was a white animal, smaller than a horse, bigger than a donkey, with wings. Its name was Burak. The Prophet was invited to ride the Burak, and in a moment it carried him across the desert faster than lightning to a city far away, Al-Quds, today known as Jerusalem. He stopped at a holy place, Masjid al-Aqsa, and there something even greater happened. He entered the masjid and found a group of people waiting. These were not ordinary people. They were the prophets of the past: Ibrahim, Abraham, Musa, Moses, Isa, Jesus, Yusuf, Joseph, Nuh, Noah, Dawood, David, and Muhammad, peace be upon him, was asked to lead them in prayer, the last prophet leading all the prophets. It was a sign. He was the seal of them all, the leader of the messengers, the final link in the chain. But the journey wasn't over. After the prayer, Gabriel took the prophet upward into the skies. Not in a dream, not in his mind, but physically, body and soul. This was the mirage, the ascension. He passed through the first heaven, then the second, then the third, until he reached the seventh. In each heaven, he met a different prophet. He saw the angels, the blessings, the realities of the universe beyond human imagination. He saw people being punished for their sins. Those who lied, those who cheated, those who spread corruption. And then he came to a place where even Gabriel stopped. Gabriel said, "I cannot go beyond this point. If I step further, I will be destroyed. But you are invited." And the prophet continued. He came to the lote tree of the utmost boundary, Sidrat al-Muntaha. No creation had ever gone beyond this place. And then he stood in the divine presence of Allah. We do not know what he saw. We do not know how it looked. But we know It was the greatest honor ever given to any human being. And in that sacred moment, Allah gave the Prophet a gift. The gift of prayer. Originally, the command was 50 prayers a day. As the Prophet was returning, he met Musa, peace be upon him, who asked, "What has your Lord commanded?" The Prophet said, 50 prayers a day. Musa replied, "Your people cannot do that. I tried with my nation, and they could not handle it. Go back and ask for a reduction." And so the Prophet returned to Allah, and the number was reduced from 50 to 45 to 40, and so on, until it became 5 prayers a day. And Allah said, "They are 5 in number, but 50 in reward." Then the Prophet returned to earth. He traveled from the heavens back to Jerusalem, from Jerusalem back to Makkah. All of this in a single night. When he woke up the next morning, the world had changed, but most people didn't believe him. They laughed. They mocked. They said, "You went to Jerusalem and came back in one night? We take weeks to make that journey." Even some of his followers were shaken, but one man, the strongest in faith, stood up immediately. Abu Bakr. He said, "If Muhammad said it, then I believe it." From that day, he was given the title As-Siddiq, the truthful one. The miracle of Isra and Miraj became a turning point, a reminder that even when the earth was against him, the heavens were with him. But still, the people of Makkah rejected him. And now, the Prophet was looking for something new, a new home, a new beginning, a place where his message could grow in peace. Every year, the tribes of Arabia came to Makkah for the pilgrimage. One year, during the Hajj season, the Prophet met a small group of people from a town called Yathrib. He spoke to them about Islam. They listened carefully, and they believed. They said, "We have heard of a prophet to come. Maybe you are the one." They promised to return the next year with more people. And they did. The next year, 12 people came. They took an oath called the First Pledge of Aqaba, promising to believe in Allah, speak the truth, avoid sin, obey the Prophet, and support him when he came to them. The following year, they came again. This time, 73 men and 2 women. They made a new oath, the Second Pledge of Aqaba. This time, they promised, "We will protect you like we protect our own families." It was a new beginning. The Prophet now had a home waiting for him, a city that would welcome him, protect him, and become the center of Islam. But before he could move there, he had to plan carefully. Because the Quraysh were watching, and they were planning something dangerous. They knew the Prophet had found a new base, and they knew if he left, they could lose everything. So they came together and made a plan to end everything. A plan to kill the Prophet Muhammad. Art 4. The Hijrah, the battles, the victory, and the legacy that changed the world forever. The Quraysh were terrified. They had tried mocking, threatening, starving, and even attacking Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. But now they saw something that scared them even more. He had found a new city, a new people, a new beginning. And they knew if he left Makkah, they would lose everything. So they gathered in a secret council and planned something evil. Let us kill him. Let us choose one young man from every tribe. They will attack him at the same time, so no single tribe will be blamed. This was the final decision. They would end the life of the prophet that very night. But Allah was watching, and the prophet had been warned. He turned to his loyal companion Abu Bakr and said, "We have been given permission. It is time." This was the moment. The prophet would leave his home, his city, his birthplace, forever. The journey was called Hijrah, the migration to Yathrib. But first, he had to escape the city without being seen. That night, the Quraysh surrounded the prophet's house. They were waiting to kill him in his sleep. But inside, Ali ibn Abi Talib, the prophet's young cousin, was sleeping in his bed, wearing his cloak, to protect him. The prophet had already slipped out, silently, walking past the men. Allah made their eyes blind to his escape. He and Abu Bakr left the city, walking toward the opposite direction of Yathrib to confuse the Quraysh. They hid in a small cave called Thor, deep in the mountains. For 3 days, they stayed hidden. The Quraysh searched everywhere. At one point, they even stood at the entrance of the cave. Abu Bakr whispered, "If they look down, they will see us." But the prophet calmly said, "Do not be afraid. Allah is with us." Allah sent a spider to spin a web across the cave entrance, and a dove made a nest and laid eggs. When the Quraysh reached the cave, they said, "No one could be inside. The web and eggs are undisturbed." And they left. After the danger passed, the Prophet and Abu Bakr continued their journey. Across the burning desert, facing hunger, thirst, and the risk of death, until they reached their destination. When they arrived, the people of Yathrib were waiting. Men, women, and children stood outside every day watching the road, hoping to see him. And when he finally came, the whole city cheered. They sang, "The moon has risen over us from the valleys of Wada. We must give thanks, as long as there are those who pray to Allah." Yathrib was no longer just a city. It became Medina, the city of the Prophet. For the first time in 13 years, the Muslims were free. They built a mosque, simple, with palm trunks and dirt floors, but filled with light and unity. The Prophet created a brotherhood between the migrants, Muhajirun, and the locals, Ansar. He signed treaties with the Jewish tribes. He gave rights to all people. He built a peaceful society based on justice, equality, and faith. Quraysh arrived. They were shocked. Their horses could not cross. They waited for weeks. Allah sent a powerful wind. It blew their tents, their fires, their food. They left in fear. The Muslims had won, without a major fight, and now Islam was stronger than ever. Soon after, the Prophet decided to go to Makkah, not for war, but for peace. He and 400 companions went, wearing simple clothes, ready to perform Umrah, the minor pilgrimage. but the Quraysh blocked them. After tense talks, both sides agreed to a peace treaty, the Treaty of Hudaybiyah. Some Muslims felt disappointed. They wanted to enter Makkah, but the Prophet said, "This is a victory." And he was right. In the peace that followed, more people entered Islam than in all the years of war. The message was spreading. Hearts were opening, until finally, one day, the Quraysh broke the treaty. And now it was time. The Prophet gathered 10,000 Muslims, the largest Muslim army so far. They marched toward Mecca, not to destroy, but to restore truth. When they entered the city, the Quraysh were shocked, but instead of revenge, the Prophet said, "Today is the day of mercy." He forgave them all. He walked to the Kaaba. He entered and removed all the 360 idols. He said, "Truth has come. Falsehood has vanished." And he stood before the people of Mecca and said, "What do you think I will do with you?" They replied, "You are a noble brother, son of a noble brother." And he said, "Go, you are free." That day, the people who had once tried to kill him now wept and accepted Islam. He returned to the city where he had been insulted, hurt, and attacked, and he returned with forgiveness. In the next few years, Islam spread across Arabia. Tribes came from every direction to accept the message. And then one day, the Prophet received a new verse. "This day I have perfected for you your religion, and completed my favor upon you, and have chosen for you Islam as your way." It was the final message. Shortly after, the Prophet fell ill. His fever rose. He was weak. He led the prayers as long as he could. Then he passed the roll to Abu Bakr. On his final day, he lifted the curtain from his room and saw the Muslims praying together. He smiled. That was his last moment. Soon after, the greatest man to ever walk this earth returned to his Lord. He was buried in the room of his wife, Aisha, beside the mosque he built with his own hands. The city of Medina wept. The world had lost its guide. But his light never went out. Final lessons from the life of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. He was born an orphan, but changed the world. You don't need perfect conditions. You need purpose. He lost everything, his parents, wife, children, support, but never gave up. Strength is not in your body. It's in your heart. He forgave his enemies when he could have destroyed them. True power is not revenge, it's mercy. He didn't ask for money or fame. He wanted to lift others, not himself. He taught us to pray, to forgive, to stand for justice, to serve the poor, and to speak the truth even when no one listens. He faced pain, betrayal, and heartbreak. But he smiled, he prayed, and he kept walking. He left this world with no gold, no palace, no army, just a legacy of light. His message, that you are not worthless, that you are not alone, that every soul matters, that the world can change if you walk with faith. If you remember one thing, let it be this: one man, one mission, one God, and the world was never the same again. This was the life of the Prophet Muhammad. peace be upon him, told with love, truth, and respect. And if you listened all the way till the end, you did not just hear a story. You witnessed history. You felt faith. And you improved your English too, word by word, feeling by feeling. Thank you for listening to the most powerful story ever told. I hope this touched your heart. If you believe others should hear this too, please share, subscribe, and let this light reach every corner of the world. Because stories like this are meant to live